You are listening to The Unseen World. In this podcast, we delve into metaphysics, answer our listeners' questions, and cover topics like psychic abilities, divination, magic, witchcraft, the paranormal, and more. Step into the realm of the unknown today and join us at cocreationcoaching.org/unseen. That's cocreationcoaching.org/unseen.
Welcome to the Unseen World. This is episode 4, The Planetary Archetypes and Their Role in the Creation Process, Part 2, The Collective Planets. I am Brandon Oliveris.
And I'm Christine Oliveris.
I'm Justin Williams.
You sound unsure today. Last week you were excited. Today you sound unsure.
I'm a little unsure, yeah.
A little unsure.
Last week I'm like, we have a guest. This is awesome, and it was.
You were psyched last week.
I was psyched.
We should get more guests.
I know, right? So, okay. Today we are talking about, this is part 2, as I said in the title, obviously, of the podcast we did 2 weeks ago in the last Unseen World, where we talked about the first 5 planets of astrology, oddly including the sun and the moon, which really aren't planets, but we say they are. So we started that off with, how they influence your life, how they play a role in your everyday life, whether you know it or not, and how you can use that to sort of balance things and to really help with creation process and creating what you want in life. Today we're discussing the other 5 planets: Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. Yes, Pluto is still a planet in astrology. We're sort of not going with that, with the flow of, people who say Pluto's not a planet, so we're stubborn. So that's what we're discussing today, and these planets are a totally different type of energy than what we call the personal planets, so you'll see that in this podcast. First of all, before any of that, let me make some announcements. If you would like to see today's show notes and read the transcript or leave a comment on the podcast, you can go to cocreationcoaching.org/Unseen004. And if you would like to ask a question for your future The Unseen World podcast, you can go to cocreationcoaching.org/ask/unseen. Okay, so I'm always psyched about this topic because it's always extremely interesting. I love astrology, and hopefully that shows.
He's darn good at it.
And I've always wanted to learn more about astrology. I've read books on it, but I think I'm going to really get back into it pretty soon.
Yeah.
I enjoy it.
You should. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
Now, I want to point out, for simplification, I divided the planets into 2 categories, the personal and the collective. And that's true. But, I mean, in reality, you can divide them kind of into 4 categories, and I'll discuss that now. So the first category is the luminaries, and that is the sun and the moon.
Makes sense.
Right? Okay, those are our luminaries, the major and minor luminaries. Then the personal planets are technically Mercury, Venus, and Mars. And I'm mentioning this for a reason that I'll say in a second. Then you have what we call the social planets, which are Jupiter and Saturn. I've put them into the category of the collective here, but they're kind of a subcategory is the social planets. And then the transpersonal planets are Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And they're transpersonal because they define generations. Uranus being 7 years in the sign, Neptune being 14 or so years, Pluto like 13 to 32 years. They define generations. Okay, so that is a whole different area than just the personal planets or even the social planets, which might spend a year or 2 in a sign. It's just it's on another level entirely. So those are really the 4 categories of planets. And the reason I mention that is the transpersonal planets are what are called higher octaves of the personal planets. You ever hear that, Justin or Christine?
No, I haven't actually.
No.
Not that.
No?
Is it kind of like what you teach about, I don't mean to bring another subject in,
Okay.
but about the chakras when one is reflects the other kind of thing?
Yeah, really close. Very close. It's basically it takes the energy of the equivalent personal planet and kind of takes it up a notch. Okay, so, Uranus is the higher octave of Mercury. We'll talk about why later. Neptune is the higher octave of Venus. Pluto is the higher octave of Mars. It's similar energy, but it takes it up an octave. It's not exactly the same meaning, but it's similar. Mm-hmm. And it's broader and more collective, obviously. And it's more intense, usually. These are very intense planets. All the transpersonal planets, all three of them were discovered only within the last 200 years or so. Right? So they're more recent, and so their meaning has evolved, and it's more evident also what their influence on the world has been because of that, which I'll get into later. So I just want to make that note before we get into any of that kind of discussion. So first of all, we're going to be getting into the social planets. Like I said, Jupiter and Saturn, and Jupiter and Saturn, that connection is actually the whole reason I wanted to do this series, because the relationship between Jupiter and Saturn is so interesting and so useful for our everyday lives that it really deserves covering. And we'll cover this quite a bit today, I think. It's hard to separate them, so I'm not going to try to separate them too much. In fact, when I was reading up on the planets, I was reading some articles earlier, and the astrologer that had written these articles actually merged Jupiter and Saturn into one article, because they're so interrelated that you really can't separate them too much. They're two sides of the same coin, but they're like night and day. Okay, so first of all, Justin, do you know much about Jupiter itself?
You mean as the planet, or as
as the astrology?
Oh, yeah, it's social. Energy. It's about abundance, money. A lot of its correspondences are oranges, apples, the abundance like fruit. Let's see. Fluorite is one of the stones that goes with Jupiter, and some of the bluish stones. Yeah, some of the bluish stones go with Jupiter, like sapphire,
right,
and some of the blue crystals, topaz. So,
right. Yeah, abundance is one of the things it's often associated with. It's actually, that is true.
Its day is Thursday.
Its day is, yes, Thursday. That is true, yes. It does have to do with abundance in a way, but that's not really its major attribution. Okay? Actually, the planet of Jupiter has everything to do with expansion. Okay?
Expansion, there you go. That's the other word.
Expansion. Right. In Indian astrology, Vedic astrology, Jupiter is called the guru.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. It's the spiritual teacher. It's very, very, very advantageous. So, you know what I mean? It has a lot of positive attributions to it, which is really good. It's luck, it's expansion, it's freedom, all that kind of thing. And unexpected luck. Well, I guess all luck is unexpected. Well. But you know what I mean? Like if it's abundance, it's unexpected abundance. It's not something you work hard for. That's more Saturn, which we'll talk about. Saturn can lead to abundance too, but Saturn is more, you work your way up the corporate ladder and you get there. You know what I mean?
Grind it out.
Jupiter is more the overnight success. Like, oh wow, all these things just sort of lined up. That's the thing we're all sort of looking for with the law of attraction, isn't it? We're looking for that big success. We're looking for that, instant breakthrough, that instant, lottery win or something that'll bring us to the success we're looking for. And I think a lot of what I've talked about is sort of going against that, because I say, actually, you sort of need to, yes, that can happen, I'm reading a book now about a lottery winner who won like several times using the law of attraction. He's explaining how he did it. But in general, it takes a more progressive path to get there. You want more of the Saturn energy mixed in. So that's what I'll talk about. But, Jupiter is all about expansion. It definitely is. And freedom. So, Jupiter is like in Greek mythology of Zeus, Jupiter is actually in Greek mythology the supreme god. You would think the sun would be, Apollo, or whatever, but
nope.
it's actually Zeus. And, Jupiter is the biggest of all the planets. It's really very similar to the sun in that way, but it's more in a spiritual sort of higher way. It's not a higher octave of the sun, but it's similar. You know what I mean? In that way. So that's what Jupiter is all about. And I know a lot of people are really drawn to Jupiter because of that, like I said, because they want that instant success. They want that breakthrough. People are always psyched when Jupiter comes through their second house. The second house is finances. People are always psyched when it comes through their second house. Usually it doesn't have the intended effect because it's not so clear cut. It's not so clear cut as people think.
My Jupiter's in Leo, but I don't know what house. My Leo, but I don't know what house it's in.
Your Jupiter is in your 8th house, which is probably why you're interested in occult matters, because the 8th house is very occult.
You want to check mine?
Sure.
Wow, okay, so one of the things you ought to do is focus on the house. If you want abundance, I guess focus on the part of your chart that Jupiter's in and see if you can find abundance in that house, I guess.
Exactly. Right. So that's something that you would, be able to look at. And you want to, if you want to look at abundance, you want to look at what planets are in your second house, the ruler of your second house and where that is. And it's very complex. Christine's Jupiter is actually the same as mine as far as house placement. Hers is in the 9th house in Cancer. Mine is in the 9th house in Gemini.
Okay. Like I said,
so
that's interesting.
And, for me, it's always been, Jupiter has a lot of similarities to Sagittarius. Sagittarius is the philosopher.
Yes.
Okay, and the 9th house is the philosopher, too. So it's very well placed in the 9th house. It's like, okay, this is, very, very kind of spiritual, religious sort of thinking, that kind of thing. You know what I mean? And so that's how mine is in Gemini is all about communication, writing. It's no wonder I like to write about spirituality.
What about me?
Cancer, it's really more of the healing thing, honestly.
Oh, really?
Sure. So, but yeah, that's Jupiter. It's all about luck and freedom and success and expansion. It's a lot of fun. But we can get carried away with that really fun, awesome Jupiter energy. We can get carried away. And what happens with people with a lot of Jupiter is that, and this has been my problem in the past, I've mostly curbed this tendency, but to start a lot of projects that you have such inspiration for, and then they fizzle out. You ever have that happen?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a little bit.
I have all the time.
At least you're pretty good at having that not happen, especially now. But yeah, that's happened before. Yeah.
So you have this, this project you really want to do, and you start it, and you're really inspired, and then it just sort of fizzles out, because with Jupiter, it's very fast acting. You really want to get it right away, and that's it. But projects a lot of times require a lot more long-lasting energy. So we'll talk about Saturn in a minute. You need the more long-lasting Saturn, discipline, order, working through it all, that kind of thing. So, you know what I mean? It's two sides of the same coin. But that's the flaw. That's the error that a lot of people can fall into when they have a lot of Jupiter energy. Okay, so especially, like I said, if Jupiter's in the second house or transiting the second house, it's like, yay, I'm going to have a lot of money, but it's not so much. You might have a windfall or something, but it's not always, if your vibration's not aligned with that, it's not always going to last a long time.
Yeah.
So.
Well, mine must have been there recently.
There was a story of, I was reading this article, and I don't remember, it was several months ago, I think. And someone told a story of this guy who, actually, I think it was a wife, and her husband had Jupiter in the second house. And she's like, he doesn't work, so I don't get how Jupiter's in the second house. Well, his wife totally supports him. Before he was married, his parents totally supported. He hasn't had to work a day in his life, right? He gets everything he wants pretty much but it's given to him directly.
And his wife didn't understand that?
Right. Well, not initially.
The reason why is Jupiter's the second house, and it works.
Exactly.
I'm done supporting you. Go get a job.
Right. But you know what I mean? Like, that's the kind of thing. It just sort of comes to you. You don't have to necessarily do the work. Not that that's always a good thing, but, you know, that's sort of the kind of thing that was going on. Whereas I don't remember where her Jupiter was, but it was somewhere else. But she was the one doing all the work and that kind of stuff. So, you know what I mean? Like, that can definitely happen. Saturn's the one that says, okay, I need to get a good job, I need to get a good career, get down and you know, into the world and play my role in it and that kind of stuff. And that's, you know, a lot of spirituality, I find, if you've noticed, and I've done this absolutely. I mean, I'll talk about Uranus in a little while. Uranus is pretty similar to Jupiter in this way that I'm about to say. We don't like authority, right? A lot of us, especially, you know, kind of eclectic spiritual types, we don't like authority very much. We don't like structure very much, right? So that we don't like Saturn, but Saturn plays an essential role in all that. And I'll explain why in a minute. But we want to go after this Jupiter energy. We want to have this expansion. We talk about the new age of Aquarius and all that kind of stuff, and you know, this freedom and this whatever. But we don't want to, you know, put in the work, right? So that's sort of what happens with Jupiter.
Are we in Aquarius yet? The age of Aquarius, or no?
Depends who you ask.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't think so. Not if you look at the.
I thought we were in the age of Aquarius, but I don't know.
Not if you look at the what's it called?
Everything I've seen is the Aquarian age, but that doesn't mean it's right. That just means that's just what I've seen.
I don't think that we're in Aquarius quite yet, because if you look at the it's called the precession of the equinoxes. I could not remember that term to save my life. The precession of the equinoxes. We're still at about 5 degrees Pisces. We're seeing the beginnings of Aquarius, but it's not for I think another 100 years or so. The precession of the equinoxes is basically, over time, the point of the vernal equinox when we're at, you know, what we would imagine 0 degrees Aries, is pointing progressively backwards through Pisces, not at Aries. You know, because the signs are associated with the constellations, right?
Right.
And when astrology was first sort of formed, you know, the signs and the constellations were equal. Aries was the Aries constellation, Taurus was the Taurus constellation, etc. Well, as time went on, we kept, you know, like March 21st, was the vernal equinox, and that was the beginning of Aries, and that's just how it is. But if you look at the constellations that match up, we're going backwards through them, so that we're actually almost in Aquarius at this point. So the age of Aquarius is when the vernal equinox would be in Aquarius, not in Aries or Pisces. Okay, so right now we're in the age of Pisces, which is each one lasts about 2,500 years. So technically, and it depends on the calculations you use, technically we're still in the age of Pisces. And we're getting there, but you're starting to see the beginnings of it, you know. Definitely, you've been seeing the beginnings of it for about 100 years now, but we're not technically there yet. Mm-hmm. Okay, so
that song "Age of Aquarius" is a little early.
Yeah, a bit. People jumped the gun. They wanted to think that 2012 began the age of Aquarius or whatever. There are lots of things, but it's not quite yet. Probably not for. I think it's around 2150 or so that we enter the age of Aquarius technically. So, but yeah, you know, we like to go after Jupiter. You know, we like to go after Jupiter and all the expansion that entails, and the, you know, kind of not having structure and that kind of stuff. That's sort of our thing, right? And I get that. But, you know, Saturn, which is the other side of that coin, is a necessary part of that, albeit one that we don't like very much. But
it's kind of like a strict father or something.
Well, it's sort of, you know, yeah. It's sort of like, you know, the pendulum. We were in very strict, you know, religious sort of, if you want to think of Saturn, think of like the church, you know.
I like Saturn.
Very, very, yeah. Well,
Of course you do.
Right. Think of the church. Think of tradition.
joking.
Think of, what's expected of us. That kind of thing, and for a lot of us, we've rebelled against that, which is great. We've gone totally the other way where, I don't want any structure. I don't want anything.
You gotta have a little.
I want all my stuff to come easily, and that's the other side of it. The truth is in the middle, right? As it often is. So let's talk about Saturn for a second. Well, actually, quite longer than a second.
Mine is in Virgo.
But yours is in Virgo?
Yeah.
Mine is in Sagittarius as well, and Christine's is in Capricorn. Mm-hmm. And mine's in my third house.
I don't know what house mine is in.
Well, I know my Saturn return is in Capricorn, but the
Yeah, your Saturn return is where your Saturn is.
Oh.
Yeah.
Your Saturn is in the fourth house.
What house was mine in? Sorry.
The fourth house.
Oh.
That's what I just said.
Oh, I thought you were talking to Justin.
No.
What's that one mean?
Fourth house has to do with home, family.
That's right.
Childhood, so kind of a more strict, you know where that comes from. And Justin's is, you said Virgo?
Saturn's in Virgo, yeah.
Yeah, you're right, in your ninth house. Okay, yeah. So, yeah, and mine's in Sagittarius. So, and in my third house, like I said. So Saturn is that more strict part of the energy. It's strict. It's constricting, confining. It's authoritarian. You could say is a very good word for it. We don't like that. It's not so pleasant, right? So, Saturn is really the opposite of Jupiter in a lot of ways. They're similar in some ways, and they're opposites in most ways. Saturn was always referred to, as a very negative planet, but it doesn't have to be.
It can teach, right?
It can teach. It is definitely a
great teacher.
Very good teacher, yes, but a very strict one. Okay. Saturn in Greek mythology was Kronos.
Oh.
Right. Yeah. So Jupiter's father, basically, Zeus's father.
Yeah.
Right. So, and the myth of Kronos is that he was afraid one of his children would overthrow him, so he ate all of his children, the first 5 of them anyway, until Zeus came along, and then Zeus overthrew him. So, his worst fear came to pass. But
that's funny.
So Saturn is very real world, realistic, that kind of thing. Okay. I've always been very against Saturn. It's only in recent times that I've gotten to appreciate what Saturn's all about. And like I said, law of attraction, we really go after the Jupiter energy. So let me explain a little bit about Saturn energy. Saturn energy is often called the Lord of Karma because it's thought that, the suffering we get from Saturn maybe has to do with our karma, maybe from a past life or something like that. I don't know about that necessarily, but it has to do with definitely where we need to grow and, where we need to evolve. So where Jupiter is expansive, like I said, Saturn is very constrictive, restrictive. And, you can still get abundance with Saturn. It just takes time, right? It's the hard path, working day in and day out, day after day until you make that break and you get it, right? Saturn is about patience, all that stuff we really don't want to hear about, right? That's what Saturn's all about. That's the traditional path. You go to college, you get a degree, you go to get a career and all that kind of stuff. It's you worry about real world concerns. Okay. And I am slightly cringing as I say that.
So I was going to say the path you took.
Not the path I took. Not at all.
And Saturn is probably cringing.
I have a lot of Jupiter and Uranus in my energy. You'll
Saturn cringes whenever you come near it.
Yeah, a little bit. But I've come to appreciate Saturn. Okay, so like I said, Jupiter is all about quick luck, overnight success, that kind of thing. That happens, but it's not always realistic. Okay?
The Saturn has to kind of balance it.
Saturn has to balance it. It's, for example, like I said, people who have trouble finishing projects. You start a project, Jupiter energy is really awesome. It's going to get you going and inspire you and that kind of stuff. And then, okay, how are we going to market it? How are we going to get customers? How are we going to sell this thing? How am I going to make money to survive?
Always been my
It's those pesky real world problems that we'd rather not look at. But we have to. Because a business that doesn't look at how we're going to market ourselves, how we're going to sell our product, how we're going to get customers, is not going to be a long-lasting business. Right? So you have to look at these sorts of concerns. You have to look at the work that's involved. Now, when I say work, I'm not saying that it has to be, work that you hate. It might not always be your greatest joy. I mean, I always hated marketing. It's still not my favorite, but it has to be done. Has to be done. Right? It's just a necessary part of it. As a, business owner, any business owner out there, you wear all the hats. Right? You have to be the marketer, you have to be the writer, you have to be, the financial person, you have to do it all. There's just not room for anything else unless you can start hiring out, but that's when the money's already started coming in. So you got to bootstrap.
You got to find somebody.
Where you going? Exactly, you find venture capital or
to
something
help you
like
out,
that.
or a person that covers your weaknesses. But
exactly
that would be a part of your spiritual chart helping you out. Though you still always run into that. You always run into it one way or the other. You can surmount it in more than one different way, but you eventually have to run up against it.
Yep. So that is what we have to look at, and that's, bootstrapping. Bootstrapping is a really good word for it. We have to make, pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
I always had a funny imagination when someone said that you're trying to grab your own straps of your boots and pull you up. It's like, how do you do that?
Well, you don't. The point of the expression is it's impossible or very, very difficult.
I know.
But yeah.
I've always had that funny.
I know. So that's Saturn for you. It's stuff you don't want to look at, but you have to. So where I come in, people often don't like, sometimes what I have to say that sort of differs. Like I said on the last support call, everyone says law of attraction is about, feeling good and no resistance and all that kind of stuff. Very, very Jupiter kind of feelings. I said that the central driver behind the law of attraction is what? Tension.
Yeah.
Right? That's very Saturnian, I guess would be the adjective.
Saturnian.
You know what I mean? That's what it is. And I say that, you have to work towards your goals. People, no, just feel good about it. Just drop it. Don't think about it, and it'll come. Not usually. Saturn's that part that says, yeah, we got to change these subconscious structures and make it happen. So when it comes to the law of attraction, you need both. I'm not saying all Saturn. All Saturn is very dull. Just Saturn's like boring, right? Or just very it sucks the joy out of it, right? But when you have all Jupiter, it's unrealistic. It's one of the ideal but not practical. So you want to balance the two. In whatever you're doing in life, you want to balance the two and come to some kind of consensus, some kind of balance, some kind of agreement there between those two energies. So that's really where Jupiter and Saturn come in. I know I spent a lot of time on those two, but it's so important because, again, they're totally different energies, but they're so important, and we don't want to look at them. We don't want to, we don't want to hear that we have to put in the work. We don't want to hear that we have to look at, what's holding us back. We don't want to hear that it might take time, that we might not get it right away. I worked on my dream for several years before it actually started to come to fruition. Mm-hmm. We don't want to hear that. We want to hear about the overnight success. We want to hear about, how everything just worked out overnight and the guy who won the lottery a few days after, visualizing it or something. That stuff can happen, but it's probably only after he did a lot of inner work first. So that's the balance that you have. Yeah, you get those quick successes, but a lot more times than not, you have to work towards it, right? So that is the balance we need to look at. If you have an excess in one, it's probably going to mean a deficiency in the other. So you just want to work on balancing those, and you'll be fine. An excess in Jupiter, and you're going to be too unfocused, kind of flitting about here and there and that kind of thing.
Great for luck, though. Like if you just need quick luck, quick money, even if you need a couple of months of inspiration to win us to something to do. Jupiter's great.
But you got to ground that. You got to make it realistic. So too much Saturn, and you're going to be you're denying your own dreams. You're afraid to do what matters to you. Passion and that kind of stuff is all
stagnation.
Yeah, you become stagnant.
Can't read.
Passion is where Jupiter comes in. Exactly. So that's where these two energies come in. That's I know I spent probably half the podcast talking about those, but they're
like some of the most important. Right?
They're by far the most important. The other three we'll cover, and they're also very important. But it's these two are really the ones you need to understand the most.
It makes sense. It's like your whole life.
Exactly. So, moving on to the transpersonal planets. First, we have Uranus. And, this one is, again, was just discovered within the last couple hundred years. So it's a very new one. All of these have positive and negative aspects, okay? So a lot of times, again, is kind of a collective spiritual types, we really idealize Uranus. Uranus is the revolutionary. It's about freedom. It's about eccentricity. We want to be, Uranus is the ruler of Aquarius, right? We want to be in that Aquarian age and technology and all that kind of stuff. Awesome. Electricity comes from, is ruled by Uranus also. That's all.
Electricity?
Yeah, electricity. It's a Uranian, it's, attribution, rulership.
Okay.
Yeah?
Okay.
What? Sound surprised?
Without Uranus, guys, there would be no lights.
No, I didn't know that you could have aspects like...
Sure.
I thought they were just...
Computers,
planets.
too. Computers, yeah.
Huh.
Any kind of technology is very Uranian. And, so that's rulership. But it's also, again, revolutions in both the positive and negative aspects. Dictatorships.
Ugh.
Earthquakes. That kind of thing. That's all Uranian. It's upsets in the order of things, both positive and negative.
Revolution. Yeah.
It's feeling alienated. It's when you feel like you don't belong. We've all had that. Right? It's where your Uranus is where you don't feel like you belong. It's where you don't feel like you fit in. Okay, you're different. Right? We all like to tell people, someone, when I was reading the article about Uranus, they were joking about an astrologer or a client who said, I knew astrology was true when an astrologer told me that, I always knew I was different. But they said, well, everyone has a Uranus in their chart. They feel different somewhere.
Yeah.
We all feel different in some way. We all feel that feeling of not fitting in some way.
Oh, yeah.
So...
Yeah, okay.
Right. So that's,
I think my Uranus is in Scorpio, if I'm correct.
Let's see. Mine is in Sagittarius. Yeah. I know that.
A lot of yours are in Sagittarius.
Well, again, Sagittarius is all about philosophy and spirituality and stuff, so I'm not surprised.
What about me?
Yours,
Well, actually, Justin asked too.
yours, Christine, is in Capricorn in your 4th house. You have a lot in Capricorn.
Wow.
And Justin's is in Scorpio. Is that what you said?
Yep.
In your 11th house. So where your Uranus is where you feel like you don't always fit in. It's where you feel different. It's where you feel like you need to make changes. You know what I mean? So it's...
So I don't fit in home?
Well, it's also... 4th house is like childhood. It's where you come from.
Makes sense.
Scorpio's like weird because it's all over the place.
Scorpio is very dark and mysterious sort of thing. Yeah.
I don't know where that would be for me then.
And 11th house is more about like humanitarian efforts, helping others, where you are in society. Okay. Mm-hmm. Again, my 3rd house. So interesting thing about my chart is that my Saturn and Uranus are basically right on top of one another, which describes a really interesting dichotomy in myself. And to a lesser extent, but still enough, also conjunct with Neptune, which I'll discuss in a few minutes. So I have this really weird 3-planet cluster going on in Sagittarius. I think Neptune's in Sagittarius too. I don't remember. I'll check when we get to Neptune. But this really odd, 3-cluster planet thing going in Sagittarius for me in my 3rd house. And it's like all these very conflicting energies. You have Saturn with order and structure and Uranus with like breaking out of the order, right? So, and that describes me really well because I've always been, I'm very detailed in one sense, and I'm always kind of trying to structure my life. And on the other hand, I'm very, I like things to not be ordered all the time. I like to be unconventional. That's a very good Uranian adjective, unconventional, right? So my life has always been sort of going back and forth between those two aspects, and it's all been about balancing those. So, so that's Uranus. It's good. It is very good, but it's also difficult. So Uranus is all about change. And change we like after it's done. We look back and say, oh yeah, that was the beginning of that change. Whew, thank God it's done. The thing is, change involves instability.
Yeah.
Right? You can't have change unless the old order breaks down. That's not comfortable. We like our comfort zones. Right? So this doesn't really, it's not comfortable. Uranus really, really draws out where we feel comfortable and where we need to change. Not necessarily where we want to change, but where we need to change. So again, that's very uncomfortable. And it's also, like I said, where you feel like you're different, where you feel like you're alienated sometimes, that kind of thing. The other thing Uranus is all about is vision. This is when I say about creating your vision of what you want. This is Uranus. Okay? This is what you want to create. The more unique it is, the better. Right? Uranus is all about unique, being unconventional. So create something that hasn't existed yet. Ever since Uranus was discovered, we have tons of things that have been created that hadn't existed before. Computers, airplanes, televisions, all sorts of things. So that's what that's all about. It's holding a vision, creating a vision of what you want in life and going after it, right? So that's Uranus. It's the visionary. It's all about transformation. Okay? So that's really important. You want that vision, you want to create that vision, but, again, it has to fit in with Saturn, it has to fit in with Jupiter and all those. So, it's all balanced. An excess in Uranus would be if you are just, again, look at the dictatorship sort of thing, where revolution for the sake of revolution, or overthrowing the old just so you can overthrow the old. Right? It's when you have no stability in life, or something like that, where you just don't want to settle down into something. So, a lot of people are like that. I've been like that in my life. Yeah, I've been like that in my life for sure. But that's what it is. Like a lot of people, for example, have asked me before, why don't you stick with a certain religion and just stay there?
Gonna go there.
Yeah. I say, why? Why should I? I mean, I have my Jupiter in the 9th house. I'm all about expansion and seeking and going after things. And I have, 3rd house is kind of a lower octave version of the 9th house. It's just, how you think, how you communicate. If Uranus there, I'm obviously a very unique thinker. Why would I want to stay in one place? Some people think it's a bad thing. I don't. But I know it could get to a bad thing. It could get, some people do it just because they get bored and, it's, we need something different. We need something different. We need something different.
Church shopping is what they call it in
right.
Christianity.
The difference for the sake of difference.
That was me. I was a church hopper.
Yeah.
Or church hopping, not church shopping.
Yep.
I was a church hopper for several years.
Now, a deficiency in Uranus is going to be where you are afraid to go after your vision. You're afraid to be different. You're afraid to embrace your uniqueness. Okay, and you don't want that either. So, as always, these energies have to be balanced. Now, Uranus is a higher octave version of Mercury. Why? They're both to do with your thinking. Mercury is your intellect. Uranus is like the genius, the pretty insane genius, the mad scientist or something. You know what I mean? Like, it takes that thinking to the next level. It's like creating the vision, all that kind of stuff. So it's a higher octave version of Mercury. If you can see that. Right? So that's what that's all about. Okay, Neptune. Neptune. I love Neptune, but it's also uncomfortable. Neptune, in Greek mythology, was Poseidon, the sea god.
That's right.
So, and I've always liked, I've always felt pretty connected to Poseidon. But, Neptune is mysticism.
Yep.
Dreams. Yep. All the stuff I love. The subconscious. Being connected with your higher self. All those great things we want to encourage. Guess what else Neptune is? And anyone have a guess?
Drugs.
Yeah.
All kinds of dark energy if you're not careful.
Addiction. Intoxication.
Yep. Poison, stuff like that.
Exactly. Delusions. Insanity.
Oh, wow.
That's Neptune.
Yeah, that's Neptune. And mine is in Sagittarius and in the 1st house, you said.
Yeah, let's see.
What does the 1st house mean?
Mine is, I believe, also in Sagittarius. Everything for Christine is in Capricorn.
In the 4th house.
In the 4th house.
Wow. What's up with that?
What does that mean?
Oh, mine's in Capricorn. I'm sorry. Mine's in Capricorn.
Wait.
Also in the 4th house.
Wait. Did you just check yours or mine? Or we both?
I checked yours and then mine. Mine's in Capricorn in the 4th house. Yours is in Capricorn in the 4th house.
We both have the same thing.
So, yeah.
What does that mean then?
That's, again, 4th house is about childhood and home. And it doesn't always have to be childhood. It can also be home now, your family. Neptune being, dreams and subconscious and things like that. It's just basically, I think, like the 4th house is all about what makes you feel at home.
Oh,
also.
I see.
So, spirituality misses and that kind of stuff. But it could also be, if you're not careful, the propensity to delusion. Right? The propensity to fantasy. Neptune's all about fantasy. So you have to be careful with that energy.
Yeah.
Justin's
1st house.
I'm sorry?
What's that 1st house? Neptune.
1st house is basically you. It's your personality. Yeah, yours is Sagittarius, first house. It's you as a person, who you are, what drives you, your personality. It's just, Neptune. It's just such a very dynamic energy. It's like a lot of change. So I would imagine life would be very, dynamic, very, changing a lot.
It actually is
So that's
strange because what it does, and I didn't realize that until we've studied the houses, and I've always tried to figure this out, but it makes you look like stuff you aren't. Like it makes you look like
yes, delusion,
it
right?
makes you look like stuff
So
that
maybe
you're
people will
not.
misunderstand you.
Yes, and it's like they'll
Yeah.
go. Some people can pick up certain things, like they can see certain things, like he's in good shape, or you move like you've got some training or whatever. But it's like other stuff. It's like you appear to be somebody who's in business, but you're really not. It's like because you can do a lot of the
Right.
in stuff, but I haven't done a lot of the marketing.
Right.
So they're like, "Oh, you should be running a
Exactly.
business." You're like, "Actually, I'm missing parts of that skill set." It's like, so
Right.
Yeah, people.
or it's you're just
Right.
I don't know. It does. I've always wondered that you it's like it's strange. You don't
Mm-hmm.
people don't react the same, get it, or
Yeah.
and you end up doing stuff or saying stuff that's just outlandish. I don't even know how to explain it.
Sure. No, I get that. It's all first house stuff.
It's
It's
weird.
Neptune. I get that.
You just do weird stuff. People are like, "What are you doing?"
Right. Right. Yeah.
People think things about me too. Like they think I should be a leader. I'm not a leader.
Right.
Like I'm just not a leader.
Right.
If they think everyone thinks so, but I'm not.
Well, I
Right.
can do it. I'm more of a lead. Like it's really strange because what it does is because it's dynamic, like Brandon said. You put my chart together. I'm like the first man in. That's really what you are.
Right.
You're the target. You're the first man in. It's pretty
Right.
interesting. People, oh, you're a great leader. Oh, actually, I just sort of stick my head out there, stick my chest out there. You just see me coming first sometimes.
Right. I was looking up. Christine's probably wondering why I was looking up her 10th house. Your 10th house is Cancer, so ruled by the moon.
Wait, what?
I was looking. Didn't you hear me looking up your?
Or was it mine? I don't know.
Yeah, it was yours. Your 10th house is Cancer, ruled by the moon, and your moon is in the 11th house in Leo, so helping others. So what I was looking at is there are no planets in the 10th house, so what she was saying about not being a leader and stuff like that, it's true. But the 10th house, the ruler of the 10th house, which is the moon, is in the 11th house, which is about humanitarian endeavors, helping other people, that kind of stuff. So Christine loves that kind of, that's very emotionally fulfilling to her. So I was just looking at that. Anyway, so
Cool.
yeah. So Neptune, again, discovered only a couple hundred years ago. Right after it was discovered, we have all this stuff with the occult, ghosts, spiritualism, that kind of thing. Not really an accident,
1800s.
right? Right. Right, that's all about Neptune. So, and a lot of people we don't even realize it, are trapped in Neptune today because in the negative aspects, because we have, social media, entertainment, as an escape. Neptune's about escape. Okay, Neptune's very good with escapism and that kind of thing, where you don't want to look at yourself. Neptune will absolutely help you with that. I mean, in a bad way, but it's not really authentic, right? When you really drop, especially the ego, and you just go into Neptune and really connect, that's when you have the more positive sides to your higher self and all that kind of stuff, awakening and enlightenment and things like that, but it's, again, just like Uranus, Neptune really changes. It's about breakthroughs. I was reading an article before saying it's about breakthroughs, but part of breakthroughs is the break.
Yeah.
Something has to break.
That is true.
So, that's Neptune for you, right? So you have to be careful. So an excess in Neptune, that's always been me pretty much.
It helps with creativity though when it's in the first house.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Sudden stopping and starting and creative
Sure.
It actually helps that in a strange way.
Definitely. It's very creative. An excess in Neptune or a negative, side of Neptune, you're going to be very, again, escapist, going into, entertainment, or on the very negative side, alcohol, addiction, drugs, that kind of stuff. Propensity for delusion. Ever notice that where do we have the highest risk for delusion? In spirituality.
Yes.
You hear about people in spirituality who think all sorts of things about themselves, they're the Messiah or they're this or that, and kind of nuts, not to judge. I mean, that's the thing, is how can you judge some authentic people appear insane just from what they say, but they're not really, but some are, it's hard. And that's what Neptune's, it's all about appearances, and you just don't know. But you have to be careful with an excess, because that's what you'll run into, is that, delusion, that kind of thing. So you want to be careful with that, right? And deficiency in Neptune is you're just not connected enough. You're too in the world. You're, not connected with your higher self, and not allowing yourself to receive those energies, those higher energies. So it's beneficial for you to be there. It's just you want to balance it. You want to make sure it's in the right way. Right? So that's what Neptune's all about. Now, Neptune is a higher octave of Venus because, Venus is all about beauty and passion and, attraction, like I said last time. And Neptune, is about dreams, mysticism. It's just about kind of the same thing. It's creativity. So that's how Neptune takes the Venus energy to the next level. And Pluto. So, Pluto, Christine, here's my notes. Pluto, I'll look up ours in a second. Pluto is about transformation. Now, Pluto's my guy because he's Hades. Yeah. Okay? Hades, the god of the underworld. Pluto is the Roman version of the god of the underworld. He kidnapped Persephone and that kind of stuff, very kind of dark. Yeah. But transformation, very much about transformation.
Dark does not mean evil.
Dark does not mean evil. It's uncomfortable. I read the greatest quote. I don't have the exact quote, but from this article I read, basically that the suffering involved in Pluto, with the transformation, is not because of Pluto.
No. It's
because of our resistance to what Pluto's trying to do in our lives.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah? Just like with anything. It's not, the universe doesn't want us to suffer, but it's going to happen if you're resistant.
Well, and we block the good things.
Exactly. So Hades, Pluto, ever since, both of you know, ever since I started working with Hades, it's turned me around 180 degrees. Absolutely. He has really helped in a lot of different ways in my life. It's not always been pleasant, and he's not always, he's more apt to say, do it yourself, and I'll help you know how to do it, but, just do it, than to, kind of give a helping hand and do it for me. He's not really going to do that. Pluto is challenging. Absolutely. So that's the thing about Pluto is, it's, you're probably going to suffer, but it's because of your resistance. It's not because of anything else. Pluto will ask you to let go of something that you need to let go of, an attachment of some sort. Not just random, but just something that's really holding you back. Okay? So that's another scary aspect. It's something that's disempowering to you. Okay, now I know my Pluto, probably all of ours, at least I know Christine's and mine are in Scorpio. Second house for me, and for Christine, second house for her. For Justin, do you know yours, Justin?
Libra. Don't know the
17 degrees Libra, yeah, see, that's a different generation even. 10th house for you. Oh, Justin.
Tell them what that means after you did that.
So, So again, Pluto's transformation. So for me and Christine, second house, money, and this has been so true, hasn't it? Money,
Is that what the second house is?
yeah, it takes transformation. It takes a lot of change to get there. There's the potential for it, but not before you transform and you really change how you see things, right? And that's how it's been for us, right? 10th house, I mean, that's career. So you're going to see a lot of changes in your career, transformation in regards to your career that aren't always pleasant. You know what I mean? Obviously, it always depends on the aspects and that kind of stuff. It's just basic. But that's what the 10th house is, career.
Okay.
And yeah, so that's what that is. So again, Pluto is about transformation. It's about, what you need to let go of, how you need to change, how you need to grow, what the next step of your evolution is, right? That's Pluto. It's not easy. It's not going to be easy. It's, but it's essential. So
that is true.
Pluto is, the higher octave of Mars. Mars is that very willful energy. Pluto is also pretty willful and transformative, right? So that's how Pluto is. And like I said, I've worked with him for several months now, and it's definitely been that way. But that's just sort of how it is. So you need that Pluto energy. As much as we don't want it, we don't want to think about transformation. I mean, it's death. Pluto's death. Really, underworld, we don't want to think about that stuff. But you got to face those things in order to come out the other side stronger. And Pluto will always make you stronger on the other side.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So that's what that is. Now, an excess in Pluto energy, I don't know how much that would really happen because Pluto is pretty unpleasant to begin with. But if you were to have an excess in Pluto energy, it would be maybe focusing too much on transformation and not allowing yourself to move on to the next stage, because transformation has to be followed up by the next step, what comes next, when you become stronger, when you move on to what you're supposed to do in life. So that would be an excess. The deficiency would probably be, if you're not allowing yourself to transform, if you're holding on too much to what you're attached to, that's holding you back, and you're not allowing the energy to come through and transform you. With Pluto, I think it's such a kind of wild energy that it's sort of hard to really control it at all. So it's sort of hard to have an excess or a deficiency in it. But, if you're holding on and you're not allowing yourself to transform, then that could definitely happen. Or, if for some reason you're focused on it too much, that you're just not allowing yourself to move on. That's what would happen. Now, to kind of bring all this stuff together, one thing I want to say is, I've talked about the gods a lot, and, I'm pagan, so I work with the gods and that kind of thing. But, this is how, to me, the gods are so active in our lives. I didn't really give, god names for the sun and the moon, but you could say Sol and Luna in Roman, and for all the other planets are Roman, so Sol and Luna. They all play roles, they all play a part in our lives. Sol, Luna, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. They all play a role. They all play a part. And it's not, I've said this before, the gods aren't all benevolent, they're not all powerful, and they're not going to fix everything for us. What they will do is challenge us. What they will do is help us when they can. And that's what you see in astrology, right? These astrological energies is sort of, to me, like how the gods are working in our lives. Where is Pluto helping you or challenging you? Where is, Venus or Mercury or Mars or any of the others? Where are they in your life? In what way are they helping you? In what way are they working with you? Right? So, that's what we have. It's the energy of the gods, just, kind of generalized into these astrological planetary archetypes. But these energies are with us all the time, and it's up to us to balance all these forces. to, the reason I wanted to do this series was because, again, I see imbalance among the spiritual community and among the law of attraction community.
Yes.
As I've said, I see a propensity to overfocus on Venus, especially Jupiter, Uranus, all these really nice planets on the surface, right? We want the beauty and the passion, the expansion and the freedom and the unconventionality and the revolution and all that kind of thing. We don't want the restriction. Oh, and Neptune, of course, with, mysticism and dreams and the subconscious. That's cool. We don't want the constriction. We don't want the transformation that, with pain, with suffering. We don't want the willful Martian energy, that kind of stuff. We don't want to look at that. Don't tell me about that. Right? But my whole point was they play a part in all this too. They are all essential. Mars energy, like I said last time, is all, how you get your big goals, your next level goals. That's what Mars energy is all about. It's that will to continue. Saturn energy is, like I mentioned in Robert Fritz's conception of the creation process. Germination, which is more like Jupiter with inspiration, or even Uranus. And then the assimilation process. Not much is changing. You don't see necessarily the results, but you're getting closer and closer. That's Saturn. Finishing the job. Putting in the work. Asking those difficult questions. That's Saturn. Right? So you need these different aspects. And of course, Pluto to help you transform, help you to let go where you weren't able to before, where you're hanging on to something that's not serving you. These things aren't comfortable, but they're essential. Spirituality isn't always a walk in the park. It's not usually a walk in the park,
Well, it shouldn't be, right?
Yes, you want to live your highest joy and all that, but the path to getting there isn't always easy. It takes transformation, it takes evolution, it takes change. So that was really the point I was getting at with this series of podcasts covering all the planets. We have to look at all the energies and how they fit together, how they work together, how to balance them, and why they are all necessary in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I was never a fan of Saturn. Never. I still to this day, I really don't like tradition, all that kind of stuff. But I've come to see, how we really need that energy for our goals, like I said, to really put forth the work to get to the next level, that kind of thing. That is sorely needed in the law of attraction community. This conversation about Saturn, about, the work that's necessary, putting in the work. And we don't like to talk about that. It's not part of it because it doesn't feel good, right? But it's part of it. Like it or not, it's part of it.
Right.
So we have to have that conversation. We have to look at those things and be realistic about all this and how to live the best lives we can, right? So that's everything. That's all the planets, all the major planets. There, some people use minor ones, and I was considering covering the lunar nodes, but it's just not really relevant to this conversation.
Do that another time.
Do another time. Or, maybe in an astrology class or something, but I just want to have this conversation about the different energies at play and how they work together. So I hope that it really was enlightening and really helps people to see, where you might be imbalanced in life, why things might not be working out the way you want them to, where you might need to change things a little bit, right? And that's all up to you. And you can always, again, ask these energies or ask the gods or whatever form they take for you that's most comfortable, but ask them to help you out in your life. If you don't have enough of one energy, you might say, hey, I need a little bit more. Can you help me out a little bit? And that will happen. It's a relationship. It's a path, a journey that you take. So I hope that this helps. And again, if you'd like to continue the discussion about this or just read the transcript, You can go to cocreationcoaching.org/unseen004. If you want to rate or review or subscribe to us on iTunes, you can go to cocreationcoaching.org/unseen-iTunes, and that will redirect you there. So I really enjoyed this discussion. I hope you guys did.
It was so much fun.
That was good.
Makes me want a reading, though.
I know. We'll get there. Well, at least you know some of your planets anyway.
That's so cool.
I had the charts ready to go today.
I'm so happy you told me.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
So, with all of that, I hope that everyone has a wonderful weekend. And I am Brandon Oliveris.
And I'm Christine Oliveris.
And I'm Justin Williams.
And anything is possible.